We're ready to go live, Mayor Kate.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the San Rafael City Council meeting for Monday, May 17th. City Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Present.
Councilmember Hill.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Present.
Councilmember Yadens Galati.
Present.
Mayor Kate.
Present. All five are present and accounted for. I invite the city attorney to report out if there's anything to report out from our closed session.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Kate, members of the council, staff, members of the community. No reportable action was taken in closed session this evening.
Thank you so much. So welcome everyone, and thank you for zooming in to our city council meeting. Deep appreciation as always for the staff that you see on your screen. They're the folks that help the city to function so well today. We actually have a special proclamation later, so hopefully you'll stay tuned to that. My mayoral remarks tonight are a little bit unusual and different because I'm asking all of us to take a moment to step back from the nitty-gritty details of everyday life and consider our individual humanity and how we can best show up for each other in our community. Last week, my friend and colleague, Mayor Brian Colbert of San Anselmo, received racist threats directed specifically at him. This incident gave me pause for many reasons, as I'm sure it does for you all as well. And in trying to make sense of this scary incident, I considered the nature of the work that us elected officials do in our communities and why we do this work, even though it can make us targets. We certainly don't do it for the money. Council members receive very small stipends over the year. But where I ended up after a lot of thinking is we do it because we care. We care deeply about our cities. We care deeply about trying to do the right thing. And I mean that for our San Rafael Council, as well as the councils, all the councils in Marin County. We acknowledge that our community won't always agree with the decisions that we make. But because we care, we continue to show up with respect and kindness. While I haven't had a terrifying incident like Mayor Colbert, that represents the most extreme end of the scale, I do know that elected officials are consistently on the receiving end of personal attacks by people that don't know us. And while these interactions definitely go with the territory of public office, and we recognize that, they need to be called out as unacceptable and not okay. And as we look to the tools that we can bring into our community, we will consider in San Rafael tools like working with Not in Our Town, the anti-bullying, anti-hate organization that is known for doing transformational work. So my message tonight is one of asking you to join me in recognizing that personal attacks are an impediment to us working in collaboration to solve the challenging issues that we face in our community. My hope is that each of you listening tonight or watching tonight will continue to bring your humanity, your humanness to the work that we do together and to role model this important behavior for others. So thank you for considering this message as we move on to tonight's agenda and all the complex issues that we face as a city. So City Clerk, could you share with the public how they could participate this evening?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kate. At this time, I would like to ask staff to turn their cameras off, and thank you all. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube, where viewers can provide comments in the live chat, or they're welcome to attend by telephone by calling 669-900-9128 and using the meeting ID 899-2635-9885. And they can comment and watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda. If you're commenting over the telephone, please press *9 when Mayor Kate opens the public comment period. And once you've heard the notification that the host is inviting you to speak, you'll need to press *6 to unmute yourself. And if you're commenting through Zoom, you'll want to use the raised hand feature. If you're commenting through YouTube's live chat, please write public comment in caps in advance of your comments. Introduce yourself and then submit them. Please note there is a character limit on YouTube, so please submit your comments in groups. If you submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, it has been forwarded to the City Council and it was published with our agenda on our website. And closed captioning is available for this meeting, and the link will be posted in the live chat. Thank you, Mayor Kate.
Thank you, City Clerk. So with that, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to the council on an item not on tonight's agenda?
I do see a couple of hands raised, so I'm going to get my timer out. There will be everyone will have 2 minutes to speak. And I will hold my phone up when there's 10 seconds left, just to let you know there's 10 seconds left on the clock. And I'll let you know, Mayor Kate, if it's anyone who will be speaking by telephone and won't be able to see that notification.
Okay, and I will always remind people because it's sometimes hard to see even when they can see us. So I will cut in.
Thank you. And our first speaker is calling by telephone, and I'll allow them to speak now. They'll need to press *6. That caller dropped off. So now it's over Zoom.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Ava Crisanti, and I have to admit I'm a little stunned listening to Mayor Collins' comments. That's not the only thing that happened last week. And for Mayor Collins to use that as a sort of defensive crutch against criticism, rightful criticism of her actions as mayor and of members of her staff is unacceptable. It's completely separate from what occurred in San Anselmo. I had a lot of concerns about how unhoused individuals were being treated in San Rafael and in other areas of Marin County. And one commonality appeared to be the employment of Andrew Henning, who is an MBA who for some reason was hired by the city of San Rafael as its director of homeless outreach and planning, or homeless planning and outreach. I put in a CPRA to the city of San Rafael, and what I got back was absolutely shocking. Andrew Henning bragging about tactically eliminating mailbox service for 500 people at Ritter Center, eliminating showers at Ritter Center. Mayor Kate Collin expressing her relief that she wouldn't have to provide porta potties during a pandemic and in the month of November when temperatures are dropping and it's harder for people to get to a restroom from a campsite. So, some of the correspondence, very, very little of it I have provided. It is in the agenda packet, and the public can take a look at it. There will possibly be an investigation based on the CPRA. And I think the city should, thank you very much. The city should definitely take a closer look at the behavior of Colin and of Henning. Thank you very much.
Next caller is by telephone. And if you're listening by, oh, there we go.
Hi, this is Salama Locks. I am the San Rafael Commissioner to the Commission on Aging, and I sent a flyer, which is on the agenda, about an upcoming event that we're having. But before I mention the event, I would like for us to all take note of the comments that were just made, that this is Asian American Pacific Island History Month. It is also Mental Health Awareness Month. It is Nurses Awareness Month, and I'm a nurse. But moreover, it's Older Adults Month. And as a commissioner, we are putting on our special event on May 27th from 10 a.m. to 12:30. It's titled, Is There a Doctor in the House? It's about telehealth and bridging the digital divide. We have excellent speakers. I won't go over their names at the moment because I want you to know, in order to get this information, if you don't have access to a website or the internet, that you can call 415-473-INFO and find out how you can register and then log on by phone for this important information. The speakers are Ariana Myers, and she's with the Dawncy Health. It's a global company at the forefront of contact-free health monitoring, and she'll talk about the telehealth as it is now and how it will look in the future. Understanding the rewards and challenges of providing virtual care to patients, we'll have speaker Jose Chabas. He's Chief Medical Officer for Marin Community Clinics. To hear about the virtual strategies that the county has deployed during this time, you'll hear from Director of Marin Health and Human Services, Benita McLaren. And Board of Supervisors President Dennis Rodoni is going to talk about the challenges and inequities the digital divide had created in Marin, especially in terms of access to health care.
Thank you.
And lastly,
Okay. Yep.
Liza Massey, Marin County Chief Information Officer. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. She'll talk about the digital Marin, the project that's already underway to get us all access via the telehealth. How to do that.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
We're ready for you, Rob.
Thank you. Mayor Kate and the council, thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this evening's civil discourse. I just wanted to raise some visibility and voice my concern over the growing encampment in Boyd Memorial Park at the lower section of Robert Dollar Drive. I see this as a public safety concern, primarily regarding the intense fire season that we're facing. With the growing number of occupants in the park, I'm concerned that we could see severe damage to the park and the residences surrounding that area, mine included. Beyond fire concerns, there are obvious concerns around public safety, from sanitation regarding lack of restroom capacity, trash service, and associated incidents. In addition to public safety, there are many dogs in the park now that may or may not be under control. There are many residents, dog walkers, and pedestrians in the area. And there's also growing illegal activity in the park, from vandalism of park signs to trash and debris that are left around. In addition to the fact that that park is closed from dusk until dawn. And obviously camping in that park is in clear violation of those orders. So I just wanted to raise those concerns and see if the city had a response or mitigation plans in effect.
Thank you, Rob, for calling.
And we have received comments while the City Council was in closed session. This is from Victoria DeWitt. Honorable Mayor Kate Collin, City Council members. It has been almost a year since Samina Saud was appointed to the Planning Commission and left a vacancy on the Design Review Board. It is important that the City Council fill the vacancy on the Design Review Board and appoint a Planning Commission liaison to the DRB as soon as possible. We need a fully functioning Design Review Board to provide fair and thorough project review. It is not just about having a quorum, but more about the value that the full board of design professionals brings to the discussion and ultimate recommendations. The Planning Commission liaison also provides a valuable nexus to the Planning Commission. The Design Review Board is an important step in the review of projects subject to the Hillside Design Guidelines, where the City Council has adopted additional design criteria to ensure excellent design on our hillsides, which is expected by Centerville residents. The Design Review Board recently voted to continue the Hillside project at 3341 Ross Street Terrace to allow more time for review, including many public comments received. 3341 Ross Street Terrace is a controversial project involving legal questions and requesting exceptions to the Hillside Design Guidelines. It will require final approval by the City Council. The Design Review Board must recommend approval for the Hillside exceptions before the City Council can approve the projects. Centerville Municipal Code 14.12.040. It is prudent for the City Council to require a full Design Review Board review of this project to ensure a fair and thorough review before coming to the City Council for final approval. We respectfully request that you fill the vacancy on the DRB and the PC liaison, Planning Commission liaison to the Design Review Board before scheduling any future Design Review Board hearings. Mayor and council members, my name is Kenny Gatlin and I work for the City of Centerville. I'm also a proud member of SEIU Local 1021. You mandated a furlough for all of us last year. You knew partway through the year that the city's finances weren't in serious trouble. The economy was not crashing because of the pandemic, but you kept the furlough in place. The furlough took food off my table and made it that much harder to afford my housing. It's not like I earn enough here at the city that I can just take 5% pay cut without hardship. You took it from me and just kept using the budget as business as usual. That is a complete betrayal of my and my coworkers' trust. I don't know how you're going to make this right, but it's time you started treating your workers like the valuable public resources we are. Thank you. My name is Jamie Poirier, and I work for the City of Centerville. I'm also a proud member of SEIU Local 1021. I'm writing to you today to let you know that the city's conduct so far with layoffs and reorganization is upsetting. City staff have literally gone behind our representatives' backs to bargain directly with members and to scare them with the threat of losing their jobs. Also, you made us take furlough for no reason when the city didn't actually need the money. That is just stealing money out of our pockets when the city could have made different choices. I'm asking you as a new council to evaluate the choices you're making, both in restructuring city departments and potentially laying off employees. And in the furloughs you are still asking of us. Show us that you value us and the essential services to the public that we provide. Thank you for your time. Lindsay, as always, thank you so much for reading this. Mayor Kate and council members, my name is Bonnie Groshong, one of the librarians at Downtown Library Branch and proud SEIU member. We recently learned the furloughs that was mandated was not necessary, that the city was not in financial trouble, yet it continued. The 5% loss of my hard-earned wages and all of City of Centerville workers has created not just personal financial hardships, but has resulted in a complete lack of trust in those of you who run the city. It's unconscionable. And so I propose compensating for our loss, if not in dollars, then by granting comp time equivalent to the same amount lost. And now adding injury to insult, you propose laying off 7 coworkers to be replaced by more costly management positions. It's clear that you do not value us nor the work that we all do every day, year after year, to keep the city running. Show us that you actually care about us. Prove it. Please reconsider this layoff proposal and compensate us for loss in wages. We'd all like to be able to trust our mayor and city managers again. Mayor and city council members, I work for the City of Centerville. I'm also a proud member of SEIU Local 1021. You mandated a furlough for us all last year. You knew partway through the year that the city's finances weren't in serious trouble. The economy was not crashing because of the pandemic, but you kept the furlough in place. The furlough took food off my table and made it much harder to afford my housing. It's not like I earn enough here at the city that I can just take a 5% pay cut without hardship. You took it from me and kept using the budget as business as usual. That is a complete betrayal of my and my coworkers' trust. I don't know how you're going to make this right, but it's time you started treating your workers like the valuable public resource we are. Thank you. My name is Margaret Sawawi, and I'm a librarian recreation employee, as well as a longtime SEIU member. It was disappointing and disillusioning for me to learn that the city misrepresented their financial situation and forced employees to continue furloughs and pay cuts, making it harder for us to meet our personal financial obligations. Further, we learned from chapter leadership that the city went behind the SEIU representatives and approached 7 of our coworkers with a strategy to lay them off and replace them with management positions. Those employees were told not to discuss this move due to confidentiality concerns. I have a hard time reconciling these actions with the same city that won the 2019 Helen Putnam Award for Excellence for its Together Centerville initiative. This initiative calls upon all city employees to innovate and work cross-departmentally regardless of department and position. Some bullet points of Together Centerville's guiding principles include cultivating trust and practicing openness. City of Centerville, you know what to do, and it's the same thing you ask of us. It's time to walk your talk. This is a comment from Marita Garcia. I'm proud to be an SEIU member and support our negotiating team and members who work hard to make Centerville a great place to work. My coworker and I had a personnel meeting with the HR director. It was brief and very little information that we were told it was confidential and not to talk to others about it. She could not answer the questions we were asking and said to talk to our union. It was like a bomb, and we were extremely shocked and upset about the way the reconstruction idea was being presented. We have been on pins and needles worrying about our jobs. We were told we would have to apply for our jobs. It led us to believe that we could be laid off or terminated. It has been stressful since and feel threatened with no further information or action since. Who does that to dedicated employees who love working for the City of Centerville? Please do the right thing and respect us with our motto of making Centerville a great place to work. Thank you. Dear Mayor and City Council members, my name is Andrew Thompson and I work for the City of Centerville. I am also a proud member of SEIU Local 1021. Your management team has needlessly proposed laying me off along with six of my coworkers, replacing us with management positions. Instead of bargaining with my union representatives as required, your human resources team immediately told us we may be losing our jobs, that we aren't allowed to talk about it because it is confidential. This is underhanded, mean-spirited, and appears to violate our MOU. We are the workers who keep the city running. We provide many of the vital services upon which the community relies. If you keep treating your experienced workers this way, you will lose our trust. Thank you for listening. Mayor and City Council members, my name is Pam Klein, and I have worked for the City of Centerville for almost 25 years. I'm also a member of the SEIU Local 1021. I am the daughter, sister, niece, and granddaughter of 3 generations of unionized typesetters and teachers. Municipal workers have traditionally received lower wages and the ability to bargain individually for their own salaries, benefits, and terms of employment. The trade-off for many of us have been satisfaction of community service and the relative stability of municipal employment. Collective bargaining has worked in the city's favor in predicting annual and future costs of governance. The city acted wrongly by approaching the 7 employees whose jobs are being threatened individually, using confidentiality as a tool to isolate and intimidate these employees, is bullying and unworthy of our city government. This is from Brad Gaffney. I would like to know what the city intends to do about the encampments under the freeway between 3rd and Mission. This is from Kachow. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. We're here for the exact same reason, huge concerns. We would like to know what the city plans to do about the grave fire threats that the homeless encampments in Boyd Park pose to the community. And I'm just checking to see if there are any more public comments that have come in. I see no further public comment.
Thank you, City Clerk. We'll close the initial public comment, and I will ask the City Attorney to come on in just a moment, because for folks who might have not attended other council meetings, they'll say, why aren't they answering those questions that were brought up? We are currently in labor negotiations with SEIU, so it would not be appropriate to comment publicly because those negotiations are going on. And in terms of the encampments, there's lots of info on our website, so do go into the search bar. We do try to push out a lot of information for folks to know what we're doing, and we will look forward to having an update at a June meeting and answer lots of questions. And the last thing I'll say is I've been honored to continue to work with Senator McGuire, Caltrans, and the county to come together to work on those solutions. So City Attorney, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kate, for the opportunity. What just concluded on our agenda is what the Brown Act calls open time for public expression. And under the Brown Act, that's an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda. The City Council's discussion, deliberation, and voting on items at a City Council meeting is restricted to agendized items. And so open time is an opportunity for the elected officials present to listen to the comments that are made, but it is not an opportunity to discuss, deliberate, or respond in anything more than the type of brief illustrative response that you just heard Mayor Kate provide. That can be confusing to folks, especially when there's a lot of comment on various items like there was tonight at open time. All of these various issues that we heard about tonight do hit the City Council agenda at various points during the year, and we certainly encourage public participation at those times and on the agendized items. But I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to those unfamiliar with the format. Thanks for the opportunity, Mayor Kate.
Thank you, City Attorney. And I will also do a plug for the snapshot. If someone doesn't subscribe to the City Manager's blog, which is a bi-monthly blog, it enables you to know what is going to be on the City Council agenda, as well as decisions that were made. So again, you can go to the city website, put in the word snapshot, and you can know what the issues are that will be discussed. So with that, I will ask the said City Manager to come on, and he has the City Manager's report for us this evening. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, Kate, and Council. Just to be specific, as we have been about what these different agenda items are for, this agenda item is just for some updates and announcements, things also that aren't on our agenda tonight. But I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID-19, and then I have a few updates regarding our budget. And in that section, I'm going to briefly refer to homelessness as well. So there's a little piece of that there as well. For COVID-19, the most recent data on adjusted cases per day per 100,000 is 3.0 still. It's less than the 2.0 that it needs to be to hit the threshold for the tier 4, the yellow tier. So we're still been hovering in orange as where we've been for quite some time. Right now, the county shows 70.1% of the population age 12 and over. That's a difference from our last city council meeting where we've been talking about 16 and over. Now those being age 12 and over are being vaccinated. And that's 70.1% fully vaccinated age 12 and over in Marin. So that's really impressive. The council, I think at the last meeting, was talking about using dining under lights and farmers market and other events to make sure that there's mobile pop-up sites for vaccinations. And there will be a mobile vaccination effort at Dining Under the Lights this week. And the mobile vaccination efforts are offering both the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines as well. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, last week, we all saw the news, was updated its guidance to suggest people who are fully vaccinated no longer need to wear a mask or physically distance in any setting, except where required by federal, state, or local laws, rules, and regulations, including local business and workplace guidance. I wanted to bring that up because as we've learned many times during the pandemic, a lower level of government can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive than a higher level of government. So what does that mean for the County of Marin, that the CDC is saying that? And what the County of Marin does is they'll look at the California Department of Public Health and see California Department of Public Health guidance around it, and then decide if there are any things that they would want to do that was more restrictive in Marin. Again, can't be less restrictive. So until that happens, Marin's mask guidance remains the same. Today, I just a few moments ago saw that the California Department of Public Health confirmed that it's not changing its policy yet on the wearing of face coverings to stop the spread of COVID-19. And they plan on waiting until June 15th before changing the policy on mask wearing in public, rather than adopt the recently released guidance from the CDC immediately. So that was the date that we knew was coming anyway, where the state was looking at to potentially drop the tier system and the whole blueprint system. So it seems like that's going to align with the mask guidance. So on June 15th, California plans to implement the federal guidelines and allows fully vaccinated residents, most likely, they'll do this to go without a mask in most indoor settings. But this 4-week period between now and then gives Californians a time to focus on vaccinations, is what we heard from the CDC today. So hopefully that's a little bit more clear. There's different levels of government, and the more local you are, they're looking at California and making their own restrictions. Moving on to the annual budget process, this is a really busy time of year for us that we're in right now. Next month is going to be even more busy for wrapping up the fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. What's been happening so far as it relates to the budget is that the City Council at a recent meeting approved the Measure A allocations and received a preliminary report on the capital improvement program, which is a lot of the infrastructure, building maintenance, and other kinds of repairs. The council did a workshop on goals and objectives for the new fiscal year, and we'll be seeing those coming back in June. We are underway, as the mayor said, with labor negotiations, and the goal is to complete all of those negotiations before the end of the current fiscal year. And we'll be bringing a preliminary draft of the budget at your very next city council meeting, the first meeting in June, with the hope that we'll be able to have a budget for consideration of adoption at the second meeting in June. As we're doing that work, there's a couple things that we're tracking that are kind of going on a parallel path. And one of them is the governor's May revise. Last year at this time, the state of California was forecasting a $54 billion deficit due to the pandemic. And the May revision released last week includes a $100 billion surplus to the budget, including federal stimulus funds coming to the state of California. So the governor's May revision includes a number of new things related to relief for families and small businesses, funding for homelessness and housing affordability, additional funding for public schools, statewide infrastructure, combating wildfires, and tackling climate change. The other thing that we're closely watching in addition to the state is the federal level, the American Rescue Plan. And there's many components of the American Rescue Plan. In regards to local government support, though, the long-awaited U.S. Treasury guidance was released last week. So we're going through that now, reviewing that information, attending the League of California Cities webinar on the topic and that sort of thing. In Marin, the actual allocations were only released so far for San Rafael and Novato, because we were in a different category called metropolitan cities in their definition. And so the other 9 cities are awaiting their final allocations. So we're waiting until all these allocations are out and to make sure that we have a correct final number through the American Rescue Plan. And then we will have that in time for our budget process, as mentioned, that will be going into your very next meeting with the preliminary budget. And we'll be talking about the categories of things that the council may wish to allocate American Rescue Plan funds to. One of those categories is likely to be homelessness and housing, because it's one of the city's key policy areas. So I was just going to say a few words about that, because there's a real connection between what's going on at the state level and what's going on at the federal level, and then what we're doing locally as it relates to the budget. There are additional funds called out specifically for homelessness, and the governors may revise, and the council may choose to use funds from the American Rescue Plan on homelessness efforts as well. The city, partnering with the County of Marin, which we do on almost all things as it relates to homelessness because of their having a Health and Human Services Department, has been very active in Project Room Key, which was the shorter term housing at local hotels, and also Project Home Key, which is the permanent supportive housing, ongoing housing. And the city even last year used our housing trust fund to help make the Project Home Key site happen at Kerner Boulevard by putting in about $1.5 million, which was able to leverage an additional almost $6 million from the state of California to make that project happen. So projects like this have a direct impact on encampments and people experiencing homelessness in the city, because it creates housing units for people to be able to move to. It provides options, and it also connects people with case management to help them resolve their homelessness. Mayor Kate mentioned that she and Councilmember Kurtz and staff continue to meet with Senator McGuire, Caltrans, and others about the Caltrans property under US 101. And so some of our efforts are around particular locations, and others are trying to come up with more housing options under the idea of a solution to homelessness as housing, so that people can have opportunities to resolve their homelessness. So again, how this relates to the budget topics I was mentioning is that the city has been working with the county and other jurisdictions in Marin to how best to partner with the Marin Housing Authority. They recently received 115 new emergency housing vouchers just in Marin County, which is a big deal, as part of another aspect of the American Rescue Plan funding that went to housing authorities. So the MCCMC Homelessness Committee that Mayor Kate is involved in, and through that and regular meetings with all Marin jurisdictions, we've been looking to see how to use local funding for case management to connect with those vouchers as another way to get people housed. So the concept is that particular one is in a very preliminary stage right now. We're just having kind of preliminary conversations with the other jurisdictions and with the county. So we'll be bringing that back to a future city council meeting so we can present that possible strategy and other strategies around how to be taking advantage of these stimulus funds in addition to the things that we've already been doing through last year and leading up to this year. Moving on from the budget, just a couple other real quick things. I was going to talk about the bridging the digital divide to a post-pandemic Marin, but Salama Locks beat me to it in the public comment. So thank you, Salama, for doing that. It is on this Friday, May 21st, from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. We are co-sponsoring a virtual panel discussion with the Canal Alliance, Digital Marin, and other community partners about solving the digital divide. And it builds off our commitment about improving broadband connectivity and digital access throughout the city. San Rafael has a role on the Digital Marin Executive Steering Committee, And we look forward to bringing all of these leaders together to talk about how to make more digital equity in our community. The steering committee is quite a powerhouse and includes our Director of Digital Service and Open Government, Jessica McLeod. So we're really well represented on that group. Just for anyone who wants more information on that, I'm going to ask the city clerk to put in the chat the link to register and learn more. And then just two very quick last things. The summer market is ongoing. The ribbon has been cut and it's now every Thursday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. So a great opportunity to visit that in downtown San Rafael. Dining Under the Lights continues every Thursday and Friday from 5 to 9 p.m. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this, you can now get your vaccine at the same time that you're at Dining Under the Lights. So those of you that like to multitask, there's lots of good opportunities in downtown San Rafael on Thursday and also Thursday and Friday nights with Dining Under the Lights. So thank you for allowing me the time to provide these updates primarily on COVID and our budget, and I'll turn it back to you, Mayor Kate.
Thank you, City Manager. Always such good information of everything else going on, and we look forward to more conversations around the budget, especially. So thank you. With that, I will turn it to my colleagues. We are all busy between meetings, and so this is our moment to report out on meetings that we represent in San Rafael, and I will start with Vice Mayor Bushy.
Thank you. Last May 8th, I was very pleased to appear with Mayor Kate at the Point San Pedro Road Coalition's annual spring meeting. The primary purpose of the meeting was to honor retired Mayor Phillips, as well as Council Members Gamblin and McCullough, and our soon-to-retire Community Development Director, Paul Jensen. The group has had very positive working relationships with all of them, as they continue to have with all of us. But it was a very heartfelt tribute to all of them as part of the meeting. We also got updates from the coalition on their primary areas of issues. They're very active subcommittees that are involved in the Loch Lomond development, the Dutra Rock Quarry. That's a very big issue in this area, as well as the wetlands that are in East San Rafael here. I also attended 2 meetings of the Central Marin Sanitation Agency. We had a strategic plan wrap-up meeting where we adopted our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And we also had a regular meeting in the last 2 weeks. And finally, I had a briefing from the Marin Organizing Committee, their committee on affordable housing. And we had a very productive discussion about the issues surrounding the need for housing in Marin County and San Rafael in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you. I attended, thanks to Mayor Kate, working with Mayor Colbert, the MCCMC Forum on Economic Development. It's actually a round table. I'll just tease the word social infrastructure. And we'll probably be saying that a lot in conversation. And I suggest if you weren't able to attend, to watch the video, the recording of it, because it's a really powerful concept of social infrastructure. So that's my new word these days. I've had lots of meetings right now with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, Finance Committee, as well as Exec Committee and General Board meetings. It's like many organizations, this is the busy time. I'd like to thank Quinn Gardner and Chief White on the work that they've been doing to prepare the work plan. It has been presented in draft format, but there's still lots of work that has to be done to get down to a approved format. But you can start to see the work that's starting to be proposed for San Rafael. As we get closer, I'll be able to share more specific information as well. I'm sure Chief White and Quinn will as well. As you heard, I've been participating in the homeless discussions, and appreciate the community's interest and concern, because we all carry that information, and please continue to write messages and emails, and we'll provide information if we can. I attended the Age-Friendly Initiative, was invited to attend their meeting a few weeks ago, when we had their presentation. We learned a lot about their program and their initiatives for proposals for the year. Susan Ajaxi Wade, I believe she's on this evening, joined me in working with them, and they wanted to see sort of where we're going with our strategic plan and our goals, and we're very happy to see that we have Age-Friendly on there. And they have also applied for a grant for some additional training. So we won't know about that grant for a while, but we hope that comes through. The Economic Development Subcommittee met, and with Danielle O'Leary leading that effort. And bringing that group together, and a lot of focus obviously on the economic recovery. And as if you're out and about, you sort of start feeling like everything's good. And we've learned that so many businesses are still struggling just to make ends meet because they had to carry so much debt. So the county and other organizations and chamber and BID are all working on how to provide supports and financial supports for their economic recovery. And lastly, if you did not attend the Fire Safe Marin San Rafael focused presentation, it was very, very helpful. A lot of great questions. It was specific to San Rafael. Again, that video is available, recording is available to see. Quinn provided a lot of very detailed information and answered a lot of direct community questions for San Rafael. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Micah.
Thank you, Mayor Kate, and good evening, everybody. I attended the San Rafael Safe Routes to School Task Force, and it's always great participating and listening to the great projects they have. They were featuring some of the education and encouragement they have done with the students for spring and fall. It's been a tough year with COVID. One of the projects that they are featuring right now is the area between Laureldale and Davidson School and some of the issues. So they have some great ideas that they are going to bring it to the city very soon that I think is really going to improve that area. And then they have some other projects connecting Davidson with the Mahon pathway, Vallecito update, and a Venice Valley connection. So always great projects that I look forward to continue learning more about it. I continue attending the canal outbreak response team every week, and I just want to applaud the county and all the CBOs and the city and the effort that they are doing in the canal to get everybody vaccinated with the mobile units, going door to door, going to churches. I think we are getting there, so it's actually very exciting to see that. And then I also attended the Canal Policy Working Group with Mayor Kate as part of that. And the one thing I wanted to mention is that they have a pilot for rental assistance that is going to be tomorrow night and also on the 23rd. So I believe it's from 4 o'clock until 9. They are looking for bilingual people to volunteer. So if you're available, I'm going to be there, and we really look forward to be supporting our families with rental assistance to be able to get into the system. So lots of funding coming for support, but we just have to make sure that it goes into those hands as quickly as possible. So again, thank you to all our partners and the county for organizing this. I'm hoping that if everything goes well, they will start doing the same, maybe in the canal on site where everybody is on the weekends. And then Mayor Kate and I had a meeting with Bay Point neighborhood. And the last thing is that I really look forward to update for the climate action priorities update. We will have a meeting shortly after tonight, but I really look forward to that update. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things to report on. We had two relatively new joiners to the leadership of the city. I got to meet with Chief Spiller and Director McLeod of Digital Services and Open Government. I will summarize our conversations to say this: both independently had themes of equity and trust with community, which I thought was Fascinating, but also makes a ton of sense. Chief Spiller articulated a vision built on pillars of working together, pride and professionalism, service and future focus, and Director McLeod around data-driven capabilities to empower the city to ensure that services achieve outcomes equitably, among other things. They gave a lot of details. I will not steal their thunder, but I just wanted to make sure that the community knows the new leadership that has arrived at the city. I also met with the Weston Neighborhood Board and its members in the recent weeks and was able to provide some information on what we're doing, as well as answer questions. There's still some questions pending answers that I'm getting back to them with a little bit of research. And also, I think this was mentioned, but I'm not sure if the vote was certified, but measures G and H passed, which is great for our city schools. And I just wanted to make sure folks, I'm pretty sure folks knew that, but I wanted to mark the moment. That's all I have to report this week.
Thank you so much. And I'll just round out the report out. So I attended the SMART meeting as a Sonoma Marin Area Rapid Transit as Representative San Rafael. We approved a grant application that goes to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission Quick Stripe program to close the gap, the bike path gap from McGinnis Parkway to Smith Ranch Road. So that's now going to MTC for their final approval. Often with these grants, you have to have everybody lined up and on the same page. So that was very good news. I also attended as the Transportation Authority of Marin on their Safe Routes, a kind of executive committee. So where Councilmember Micah is talking very specifically about within San Rafael, this was pulling it back and looking at safe routes throughout Marin County and how do we continue to enhance and support that program across Marin County. Quite a bit on homelessness, as has already been mentioned. Councilmember Kurtz and myself have been in several meetings with county, Caltrans, the city staff, working to find solutions. We know the solutions, housing and case management, but really working with the folks that are in crisis on our streets to offer them housing. In addition, and City Manager Schutz alluded to this, there was a MCCMC, which is Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members, Homeless Committee, really talking about how can we work together cross-jurisdictionally, recognizing that even though there might be more apparent manifestations in a handful of cities, it's actually representative of homelessness in all of our cities. And that we actually know that some folks that are on the streets in San Rafael grew up in neighboring communities. So how do we all come to the table to work on that? Vice Mayor Bush and myself also had San Rafael sanitation meeting, truly looking at the nuts and bolts of the sewer system, continuing to check the pipes and looking at leaks and things like that. As we look into start going into drought conditions, we want to make sure that, well, there's no leaking anywhere. and there are implications actually with low water flow of what that does to sewers. I won't get into it here, but it was actually, I learned a lot about that. And then finally, we had a special meeting, the council, the five of us here last Monday, and we had interviews for Planning Commission, Fire Commission, and the Commission on Aging. And I have to tell you, the folks in our community who showed up to apply are incredibly impressive. We wish we could have appointed all of them. I am so grateful for people's willingness to put themselves out there. After much discussion and deliberation, because it was a hard decision, for the Commission on Aging, Salama Laux, who you already heard from this evening, was reappointed into her position. We appointed Ken Johnson to our Fire Commission, making sure, yep, I have that right. And then finally for our Planning Commission, we appointed John Haveman, and on deck will be Camille Harris because there's actually going to be 2 open positions on the Planning Commission. So again, incredibly grateful to everybody who applied. We couldn't be more fortunate in the city of San Rafael with the volunteers we have. So with that, thank you, team, for sharing all the things that you've been working on over the last 2 weeks. I will now turn it to the consent calendar and ask if there are any items on the consent calendar that someone would like to hold separately. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So I will ask the city clerk to come on and see if there's any public comment before we vote.
Yeah, thank you. If you're participating on Zoom by telephone, please press *9, or if you're watching through Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature, or please submit your public comments now in the YouTube live chat, and please don't forget to write public comment in advance so that I know to read it out loud. And I'll give everyone about 15 seconds. I don't see any public comments, but I did see that Salama commented, thanking you, Mayor Kate, for letting her know. Oh, we do have a public comment here. And I just want to make sure that it's known that this public comment period is going to be for the items on the consent calendar. And I will allow them to speak.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jason. This is for the CPR comment, CPRA. Hi, my name is Jason. I live at a homeless camp at Ligonier Park in Novato. I am also a homeless rights advocate and social equity advocate. And to tell you the truth, I've had a hard time reading some of the emails about homeless camps from the CPRA request by Marin Data Now. Until just recently, during the entire pandemic, there wasn't one bathroom supplied to the Viaduct camp under the freeway. This flies in the face of CDC guidelines with special considerations for encampments. Not once in all the email complaints about humane feces from residents, police, and city officials did anyone offer a suggestion for the Viaduct camp to have a bathroom. In fact, it was the exact opposite in an email from Kate Collins to Andrew Henning in November of 2020. In the email, Kate Collins states how she talked to Supervisor Katie Rice, and Rice was not in support of supplying porta potties for the homeless. And Kate Collins was relieved with that knowledge of that. I have a real problem with the fact that homeless in Santa Fe were put in this position. For them to be complained about so much for going to the bathroom in the streets, only to then have their basic human rights denied in this fashion is truly alarming. Combine this with Andrew Henning emailing a resident in September of 2020 that he and the city of Santa Fe tactically shut down the mail service to the homeless, proves to me without a doubt the city of Santa Fe lacks the compassion to deal with the homeless problem. In an email in January 2021 that was from Henning to Jim Schultz, David Starnes, Carl Huber, and Lynn Murphy, Henning states that the city of Santa Fe is doing more than any other community to compassionately address homelessness. So basically what I'm seeing is the city of Santa Fe has two agendas of how they deal with the homelessness, a hidden agenda and a public agenda. I hope for the sake for the people on the streets that this will soon change. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so if there are any items on the consent calendar, now would be the time. And if there's any other public comment, please do email us as we move forward in the agenda if you miss the time to give input, as we do read all the comments that are given to us. So
and that does include public comment.
Okay, so there are no items on the consent calendar. So with that, I will close the public comment and request a motion for the consent calendar.
I move that we adopt the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. A roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yudin-Skalati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you. So moving on, we have a special presentation. And again, I always have to remind people that normally we would have cake. So sorry, we're going to have so much cake when we're back in person. I see that Director Bill Guerin is on screen to receive this. So I will go ahead and read this. Oh, wait, so should I read it and then we have a video? What would you like to do, Director?
I would like to introduce the video, Mayor, if that's okay with you.
Okay, and then I'll read the proclamation after.
That would be super.
Okay.
I'm Bill Guerin. Thank you, Council, Mayor, for allowing us to present tonight. This is Public Works Recognition Week, May 16th through the 22nd. To commemorate the Public Works Recognition Week, we created a small video, very low budget, I have to tell you, that Talia Smith worked to create. And she managed to interview most of our maintenance staff to get a sense of what they do. And we wanted to show the public and the council the work that our maintenance team does on a day-to-day basis on behalf of the residents of San Rafael. We have a 7-minute video that I indulge your time to go through, and look forward to allowing everybody to see that, and then would love to hear the proclamation after that. So if we, Lindsay, if you could key up the video, that'd be great.
Thank you. And then if you would please mute your microphone, Bill, just so we can make sure there's no cut-ins.
The Department of Public Works maintains the city's parks, the city's streets, the city's stormwater system. We maintain all the facilities in San Rafael, including the new public safety center, the fire station, city hall, the Public Works building, and a number of other facilities.
All of our public spaces in San Rafael, I think, are what make San Rafael so special. And they're so carefully tended to and cared for by our Public Works employees. It's what really allows everything to function and allows us to have such a great outdoor environment.
The Aubergine Borough Community Center and the Pickleweed Park are probably one of the more active parks and community centers in San Rafael. It's a very diverse community. We get people from all around Marin County that come, and then we serve the Canal neighborhood itself.
Monday and Fridays, we do routes. We take care of parks. We came here to clean restrooms, pick up litter, the playgrounds dirty. You don't want your family to come and see a park like all messed up, you know. That's why I like taking care of my places, and that's why it's important to me.
This is an important part of our job. The public uses the park, and we want to make it clean and safe for anybody. Some of my favorite parts about working here are when I do get to help out the public, and when I do get to say yes, and I get to make the residents happy, because that's the best part, is when you know that you've helped someone out. Pruning the medians is one of the bigger jobs that we have. I mean, we are the Parks Department, but most of what we do is working and cutting things outside of the actual parks themselves. With all the medians we have and all the other areas we have that are outside of the parks, we're really busy taking care of those areas.
So the City of San Rafael has 42 buildings that we oversee for the Department of Public Works. I love working for the city because I live locally, so it's a way for me to give back to the community, make sure that the money is spent in the right places, and just to get to see everything day to day.
So the garage division maintains and services 275 vehicles and pieces of equipment. The police department relies on us to make sure that their vehicles are operating in working condition.
If there's an officer that's on duty that needs something fixed, they will drop everything to get that taken care of. Our cars are on a scheduled maintenance and they stick to it. It's always been a really good team.
So we try to be prepared for a storm when we know what's coming in. And that's taking care of our pump stations, taking care of all the drainage. So we go out, we clean our pump stations. We have 12 pump stations in San Rafael. We have to clean out all the debris, sediment, and all the trash that gets stuck in there. So we have to check our pumps, make sure that they are prepared for the incoming storms. People don't understand that San Rafael is below sea level on a lot of areas, so they don't understand what these pump stations are for. They keep the city from being from underwater. And it's a huge part of San Rafael.
Public Works is considered an emergency responder during storms or other emergencies. They're frontline with us, and they do what's necessary to make the community safe, whether it's stabilizing slides, addressing flood threats, opening roadways due to downed trees. Public Works is out there basically on the front lines with the emergency responders from fire and police.
A work order is a way to keep record of what's in the street. It's an engineered drawing. So whether we're adding a stop sign, speed limit sign, if we're adding striping in the roadway, that's documented in the work order. And we have a binder of all the work orders that have been completed throughout the city. Not only do I work with the maintenance crews on work orders, I work on routine refreshing of things. As an example, we have crosswalk markings that, maybe they're just 2 lines in the street. To make them more enhanced, I work with Gabe and Tyler and the other guys to turn them into continental and make them more high visibility. So it's really important that we provide a safe access for students and parents walking their children to school.
We basically handle anything from striping, faded signs, got a pumps and paving crew. I got kids, I got a family, and knowing that everybody can get home safely because the roads are safe is a huge part of my life.
So every Tuesday morning, we have a group of 12 or so guys go out with 4 dump trucks, and we meet up at the police department underneath the freeway. where there are all the homeless people. And we go through and we basically remove all the trash. We're really careful not to take away anybody's stuff.
We partnered with the homeless communities in those areas, and we provide them with trash bags and request that they keep their areas clean. Once a week, we go down and remove the trash bags and pick up any other debris that might be in the general area. So in order for us to ensure that we're not taking people's personal property, we request that they leave the trash that they want to have picked up in designated areas.
All the guys always step up to do it. You know, they don't ask any questions. They just show up and they do whatever's asked of them. They're very hard workers, humble. They just, you know, they just do the right thing to make it a nice place.
The Public Works Department they are angels because they often have to deal with garbage and property that most people really don't want to have to pick up. They never seem to complain about it and are more than willing to go out on a weekly basis to help clean up the city and keep it looking as clean as possible.
I enjoy being part of Public Works. We are a very responsive organization. I'm very proud of the fact that the staff is entitled and allowed to develop their ideas to bring about change in the government. The city of San Rafael has benefited greatly from the creativity from the people that work for Public Works, and I'm very proud to be a part of that.
Wow, that was low budget. I can't imagine high budget. That was incredible.
And we want everybody to know that it's available on the DPW website as well, if anybody would like to see it again.
Absolutely. Well, I almost want to watch that video again, but we will move along to the proclamation, which you'll see that many of the things that I call out are what we just saw visually. And so this is in recognition of the National Public Works Week for 2021. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of City of San Rafael. And public works personnel are involved in the maintenance. I think we see every single one of these that I'm going to list. Maintenance, planning, design, and construction of streets, transportation facilities, parks, storm drains, public buildings and operations, right-of-way management and emergency operations and response, and other structures and facilities essential for our residents. And whereas during this difficult time as we face the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, the San Rafael Public Works Department are essential workers who continue to work hard every day to keep our community safe and functional. Whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. And whereas the 2021 National Public Works theme is Stronger Together, representing the role public works plays in keeping the community safe and resilient by working together with residents, leaders, and stakeholders to provide essential services. Now, therefore, the City Council and myself of the City of San Rafael hereby proclaim the week of May 16th to 22nd as National Public Works Week. And furthermore, we call upon all residents and civic organizations to learn about the Public Works Department and all that they do to provide our public works, to provide services for us, and to recognize the contributions which public works personnel make every day to protect our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. So again, if we were all in the same room, we would be cheering and clapping and eating cake. Thank you, Director. I will turn it back over to you. I know there's public comment, but if there are any words that you would like to say before we take public comment.
No, I know from my text messages that a lot of my staff are listening in, Mayor, and I really appreciate the recognition that you've given the Department of Public Works. The people that work for the City of San Rafael love what they do. They work hard every day, and it's so nice of the council to recognize the efforts that they do on behalf of the City of San Rafael and the residents that live here and benefit from the amenities that the city provides. So thanks so much for all of you for recognizing the team that we have.
Thank you. And thank you for leading them so well. So The city clerk, there's a public comment on this item specifically.
Yes, there is. Once again, if you have public comments and you're calling in, you can press *9. And if you're participating through Zoom, use the raise hand feature. And if you're on YouTube, please write public comment in advance of your comments. And we do have a speaker. And I'll put 2 minutes on the clock and I'll hold it up at 10 seconds.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Ava Crisanti. Yeah, definitely have a lot of respect and admiration for Public Works, but some of the images you showed are very troubling to me of the work that the Public Works has been enlisted into doing. And I would say, particularly with regard to clearing of homeless encampments, when you show backhoe destroying encampments and putting garbage into refuse containers or into dumps, what you're really saying is that, and this the CPRA request that I made and the documents that I retrieved from that request show that the city of San Rafael steadfastly refused to provide porta potties, showers, they cut off showers, and they refused to do regular garbage pickup for unhoused individuals. So when those encampments are swept, a lot of times vital documents are taken away. Anything from identity papers to things that are very important for people's survival. And unfortunately, those things can't be retrieved after Andrew Henning brags about, quote, tactically cutting off mail service for 500 unhoused individuals, which he did. It was part of the 2017 MOU. We had 35 unhoused individuals die on the streets of Marin County last year. And if you take a look at the CPRA, what the people in charge in the city of San Rafael are doing is, frankly, it's murderous. And I think, a lot of respect for the hard labor that DPW does, but they can only be as good as the city leadership is. And Mayor Kate Collin has a lot to answer for.
So that's 2 minutes. So thank you for calling and commenting on how fabulous our public works are. And again, that video was amazing and people can watch it on the website, and do share it well and far, because it shows our staff doing great work to support our community. So with that, it's been presented. I will move along to other agenda items. So the next item is the greenhouse.
Sorry, there was additional public comment.
Oh, regarding
regarding this topic, correct. One moment. There's one more hand raised.
Okay. Well, people are energized by public work. What can we say?
Hi, yeah, are you gloating about the Department of Public Works video? Because you were throwing away people's belongings that are homeless, and I have a real problem with that. That shows a lack of compassion, empathy, and it just tries to promote what you guys are trying to say to people. And that's all I got to say. It just really disturbed me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we'll watch the video. And just to be clear, there was not encampment removal in those video. And Lynn Murphy was instrumental in helping us to get debris bins for folks that had been underneath the encampments. And they actually requested that we have debris boxes. So we responded with compassion for the folks living there. And what you were seeing was our Department of Public Works working with folks who are unhoused to clear out any debris that they don't want in their encampments. I just wanted to clarify what was in that video. So with that, now
that does conclude public comment.
Okay, public comment is closed, and we will move forward to the next agenda item, the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Report and Climate Action Priorities Update. Corey Bidoff, we are delighted to have you here, and we'll turn the Zoom room over to you. Oh, and Christina O'Rourke, nice to see you.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Let me see if I can share my screen here. If this works. Great. Yeah, so, there we go. Everybody see that okay?
We sure can.
Great. Well, thanks for having us here tonight. Yeah, I do want to introduce Christina O'Rourke. from the Marine Climate and Energy Partnership. She's the sustainability program manager there, and she helps all the cities and towns with our climate action plans, our greenhouse gas inventories, and a host of other things as well. And we're going to tag team tonight on a little bit of a lengthy presentation, so forgive me, but it's been a couple of years. So tonight's presentation, just do a little bit of update on the state of the climate, give a little framing for our climate action plan, since we have three new council members since the last time we presented on the climate action plan. And then Christine will dive into the greenhouse gas inventory. At that point, if there's any burning questions, we'll stop if you have anything specific to the inventory. And then we'll move on to a recap of the last 2 years' priorities and then our new draft priority work plan for any comments and input you or the public might have. So starting off with the state of the climate, and I know that I probably don't have to do too much on this with you. Bad news is that even with some reductions in greenhouse gas emissions during the pandemic, carbon dioxide levels have continued to skyrocket and go to their highest levels ever. We have decade after decade of record heat, including last year where Los Angeles recorded 121, and in the desert in California recorded what they think is the highest temperature ever recorded on the planet. And of course, the people that are most impacted are our most vulnerable citizens, right? They're the folks that have to work outdoors, folks that have health conditions or medical conditions, don't have air conditioning and things like that. I couldn't help but put this in. I took a bike ride up at Phoenix Lake yesterday, and I've never seen anything like this. So we hear about the drought. This just said way more than a drought is here sign. And so I thought I'd just show that as well. And last year's fire season was just off the charts again. Again, the most impacted are most vulnerable in the community. Wildfires season going longer than ever before, and fires that are considered mega fires now. And then they reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then the last thing is just about how we have these extremes, right? So as the rainy season shrinks, unfortunately, the precipitation is not shrinking with the same amount of precipitation. So we have more atmospheric rivers. We have more times where in 2015, around the Oroville Dam, it's very, very, very dry. And then 2 years later, we have this overtopping and a dam breaking because of extreme precipitation events as well. There is a little bit of good news, though, and that is that scientists have been saying that it'd be 30 to 50 years once the carbon dioxide's in the atmosphere before it starts to really level out when we hit net zero emissions. But now they're saying that actually they think that may be a decade or two. So it's not like it's fantastic news. We still need to get to net zero emissions as soon as possible, but they are saying that it should stabilize a little quicker than they were anticipating to begin with. So a little framing again around our climate action plan. The goal is a 40% greenhouse gas reduction by 2030, and that's meeting the state's targets. And I always like to stop and just ask people if they've ever reduced anything in their life 40%. Not an easy thing to do. So we have 54 measures in the plan. The plan was developed with a lot of community input and a lot of subject matter experts. We promised regular council and community updates and a commitment to adaptation planning as well. The structure is basically around all the usual suspects: waste, water, energy, transportation. And we have a sequestration and adaptation component, which is really about drawing carbon down from the atmosphere back into the earth, and also looking at how do we start adaptation planning. We have a community engagement piece because community engagement is a really major piece of this, right? Everybody needs to kind of contribute to really get to our emissions reductions, and a commitment to implement and to track our progress as well. The one key thing, we met our 2020 goal, which was a 25% reduction by 2020, but those early actions were mainly state actions and larger entity actions that contributed to our greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And at this point now, we're looking at low-hanging fruit is gone and more of the reductions need to happen at the local level. So Christine will dig into this slide in a little bit, but what I really want to do is ask you, now you heard Gerardo in the last video say he maintains over 275 vehicles here. We have over 400 employees that are commuting into work every day. We've got several facilities. We have streetlights all over town. We've got parks that we need to water and all kinds of open space to maintain. What percentage of San Rafael's overall greenhouse gas emissions do you think comes from the city operations and facilities and vehicles and our employee commute and all that? Hold that percentage in your mind, and it is less than 1%. So we have a 40% reduction that we're trying to get to, but we have direct control over about 1% of our emissions. The other thing I wanted to mention before we go into the greenhouse gas inventory is just how we frame the climate action plan this time. And that was really to elevate the economy and social equity in our considerations in all the planning that we do and all the activities that we undertake. So all the measures, we try to think that through. And the main reasons are to identify and boost co-benefits whenever possible to make sure that we're benefiting everybody, and to try to identify and minimize any potential unintended consequences. So at that point, I'll just turn it over to Christine and she can dig into our latest greenhouse gas inventory.
Okay, thanks, Corey. And good evening, Mayor Kate and members of the council. Thanks for having me tonight. This inventory is for calendar year 2019. That's the latest year that we have all the data that we need in order to produce these inventories. We are producing them annually at the Marine Climate and Energy Partnership, where I'm the sustainability coordinator. About every 5 years, we do an inventory of the government operations emissions. And we did the last one in 2016. So we'll be doing that in a couple of years as well. May I have the next slide, please, Corey? Thank you. Just kind of a reminder, this greenhouse gas inventory is something that we call an in-boundary inventory. So we're focusing on emissions that are created or produced in San Rafael. It's different than a consumption-based inventory, which includes all life cycle emissions and upstream emissions. So that would include emissions that come from mining and producing and packaging and shipping the goods that are purchased or used by San Rafael residents. That would also include air travel. It would include emissions from food production. So unless the food is actually produced within San Rafael or the goods are produced in San Rafael, those emissions are not being counted. Can you just forward to, there we go. So the in-boundary inventory is showing that emissions are about 15 metric tons per year for the average household. And that's in comparison to the consumption-based inventory, which is at 44 metric tons. Now that consumption-based inventory was done by the Air District. It's using 2013 data and they don't update it, or it hasn't been updated yet. So we are, so actually in 2013, this would have been about 18 metric tons. So we're counting about a third of the emissions. But importantly, we're counting emissions that we are able to track and we're able to quantify, and we can track it annually and mark our progress. And we also have some control over these emissions. Next slide, please. So this is a look at emissions in 2019, and it shows you the sectors that they're coming from. Almost 2/3 of the emissions come from the transportation sector. And of that, about 85% are coming from passenger vehicles that are driving on San Rafael roads. The next largest is the built environment, and that's natural gas that's being used in the built environment. And this time around, we're combining residential and non-residential buildings and separating it by the source of emissions. And this is showing that 25% of those emissions are coming from natural gas consumption, and only 7% are coming from electricity. Electricity used to be a much larger slice of this pie, but over time, we've been reducing the carbon intensity of electricity. So this slice has gotten much smaller. Interesting to note that that means also that there's really not a lot of more emissions reductions that we can get out of reducing carbon intensity of electricity. Our electricity is already pretty clean. And then the other sectors are comparably rather small. Waste is at 4%, and the others are either at 1 or less than 1%. Next slide, please. And this is looking at emissions since 2005. Emissions are down 27% since 2005. And that is equivalent to about, I think it was 14% of below 1990 levels. We also include that 1990 bar there. So we've got a ways to go to meeting our 2030 target, which, as Corey said, is 40% below 1990 levels. And then even more to go to meet the state target for 2050, which is 80% below 1990 levels. And next slide, please. So just a couple of, all of the detail is in the report, a lot of charts, and so I'm just going to give you a couple of high level points here. Electricity use is down 12% since 2005, which is great, about a little over 1% per year. Emissions are down 71%, and that is due primarily to the lower carbon intensity of electricity. Both PG&E electricity and MCE electricity is very clean. And natural gas use is down 7%. That means that emissions from natural gas consumption are also down 7% since 2005. Next slide. In the transportation sector, vehicle miles traveled are actually up 3% since 2005, but despite that, transportation emissions are down 18%. And that's because the cars that are on our roads are much more fuel efficient. We also have at least some alternatively fueled cars, mostly electric cars. There's a few fuel cell cars as well. Next slide. And then in waste and water sectors, landfill waste actually hit a low in 2011. It's since been going up. It actually went down a little bit between 2018 and 2019. And in 2019, it stood at 6% below the 2005 level. But waste emissions are down 29%, and that's because the organic material that's has been put into alternative daily cover is being reduced over the years. So that brings emissions down. So it's really important not only how much we throw away, but what we are throwing away. We need to reduce the organic content of what we are putting in our landfills. And then for water, per capita water use has declined 19% since 2005. Here emissions are actually down 96%. And by 2019, both of the water agencies, MMWD as well as Sonoma County Water Agency, were using renewable energy for their operations. So that's why emissions are down so dramatically in that sector. And that's the end of my section. I think Corey said if there were any questions that you had, well, we can pause now and I'd be happy to answer them.
Happy to keep going too.
Bigger, yeah. So why don't we keep going, Corey, and then if there are any questions, we'll come back.
Sounds great. Okay, so now we'll do a quick recap of 2019 to 2021 priorities, disrupted a little bit by COVID. So here are the 8 priority areas. There were 2 to 3 strategies under each. Out of the 19 strategies, several of them were completed. Many are in progress or have moved to an ongoing status, and 3 we didn't get to at all. The first one, Mayor Kate was really clear when we started the climate action plan update that she really wanted to see it done as an online interactive way rather than having it be a PDF that just a few wonky people like me would read. And so we made it an action-oriented website. We have these climate role models. Big shout out to Sean Mooney and Digital Services for helping put this together and helping us do our monthly engagements as well. And it's full of great climate role models, like you see here, Pond Farm, which takes all their spent hops and yeast and such and gets it to Marine Sanitary, which goes to food to energy program. And then in terms of our EV charger expansion, we put in several new chargers and some new infrastructure at City Hall. Big shout out to Public Works and Sean Graff for helping make that happen, along with our solar installation there. We did streamline our EV permit process, and we also worked with the county to develop a template that could be used by other cities and the county throughout Marin. So that was very helpful. That's one way where we can utilize some of the extra staffing that we have and some of the abilities that we have to actually help other jurisdictions and magnify our work here. And MCEP was involved in that as well. And then regarding mandatory organics, although we didn't get an ordinance to council yet, we will by the end of the year. We did create a compliance process for AB 1826, which is the first mandatory composting law for businesses, including some how-to videos. And right now, my fellow Travis Austin is running a free composting bin pilot program with businesses that are not compliant to try to find ways to help them with their infrastructure. Big shout out to Zero Waste Marin for funding for some of these things, and for our fellows, Katya Carranza put together the composting videos and the compliance process as well. In terms of adaptation planning, as you know, city staff like Paul Jensen and Christina Rourke contributed a lot to the sea level rise report and helped with the general plan and the safety element and things like that. We do have a great collaboration right now with the County of Marin, Canal Alliance and Multicultural Center Marin, looking for funding to start adaptation planning in the canal. Because I think, as you know, in the first 12 inches of sea level rise, the canal neighborhood is the worst off in all of the Bay Area in terms of impacts. So we're trying to get some funding for that. Then in terms of the solar and renewable energy, we didn't get to a lot. This is one of the areas where we didn't get to a lot, but shout out to Don Jepson for helping put together some web pages and get information out to people. When they started to come in and ask for generators, Don made sure that people knew about battery backup as well, and also helping to promote the Marin Green Building programs and the Electrify Marin rebate programs that are out there for electrifying your appliances. And then we did start on some projects with energy efficiency in some municipal buildings. And finally, our Equitable Low Carbon Economy Working Group, we did convene a core team right now, which includes John Haveman, who was just mentioned as a new planning commissioner. He's a local economist. Chandra Alexander, the CEO of Community Action Marin. Daniel O'Leary from our Economic Development Department. And we're going to be putting together the working group soon. And we did some trainings and have been working with people across the nation to figure out how to position ourselves well for both state and federal funding related to things that can boost our economy, create more resilience, and assist with pathways to good jobs for local residents. Some of the casualties were this whole idea, we really wanted to pair more technical resources and incentives with things when you come to the building counter for things like EV chargers and such. We really wanted to promote more rooftop solar and feed-in tariff programs to try to get more solar online here. And we wanted to get started on the SB 1383 work, but I'll go into that later because most of that stuff is transferred over into our new priorities. And I just wanted to mention there's a lot of other things going on. Our priorities are a way to sort of protect to make sure that we can kind of get some major things in the pipeline and over the hump. But we, of course, do lots of other things as well. And one of the big ones was switching over to renewable diesel, including for our fire trucks. And so big shout out to Thomas Wong and Ryan Montes in Public Works for getting us shifted over to renewable diesel. And that's a huge reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for our fleet. Now we'll dig into the new 2-year priority work plan draft. So we kind of condensed it down into 6 buckets: electric vehicles, solar microgrids, mandatory composting, energy efficiency and electrification, adaptation planning, and our Equitable Low Carbon Economy Working Group. So the first one, electric vehicles policy and some programs. The main thing is to get an EV plan strategy done for San Rafael. And part of that is it's funded by TAM right now. They're funding, and Christine's very involved in this through MCEP, a county-wide electric vehicle strategy, which makes a lot more sense than going city by city. And similarly, though, each city, like a local hazard mitigation plan, will have an appendix that's specific to the city as well. But really, we need to be planning transportation things like this county-wide. We'll be trying to transition more of our fleet, promoting low carbon transportation, getting people back on buses and back in smart trains as much as possible, and then looking at things like our gas-powered leaf blowers and things like that. For mandatory composting, by the end of the year, we have to have an ordinance in place. And okay, your last council meeting on the consent calendar was the contract with R3 Consulting to work with Marin Sanitary and all the Marin Sanitary Service jurisdictions so we can work across the county and make sure that we are doing it well and that we're really meeting the spirit of the law, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through diverting things that could be eaten or composted out of the landfill. Adaptation planning, the main thing is really to find funding. We really need, to do this right, we're going to need some staff time. We're going to need to elevate people's understanding in the community so we can all work from a similar base of knowledge. We're going to need to coordinate county-wide, especially when you think about sea level rise. And then we really need to focus on, again, our most disadvantaged neighborhood in the canal neighborhood and making sure we elevate people's voices and really help protect people that are living in the hardest hit area in the Bay Area. The microgrids assessment, this is a picture of Fremont's fire station. So Fremont has a few fire stations that have been turned into microgrids. That's solar power and battery backup, so that should there be any disruption to the power, there is the ability to isolate from the grid and continue to operate. So we're going to be looking at that. We have some interested parties out there that really want to work with us to try to do that, for instance, at the Borough Center. And then we'll also be working with PG&E. They have some grants that they're hoping to come out with to look at community microgrids as well that would benefit multiple residents or businesses in a certain area. And then, of course, anything with energy really starts with consumption and reduction in consumption. So conservation as much as possible. So looking at other ways to promote energy efficiency. Next year, the new Title 24 regulations will come out, which are every 3 years, and we'll be looking at those. I think the state's going to be pretty aggressive. with the new green building, but if there's opportunities for reach codes that we think really make sense for San Rafael, we'll be assessing those as well. And then promoting things like electrified Marin, as well as there's a lot of discussion out there about whether or not new buildings should have natural gas at all. So we'll be looking into that. And then finally, really conducting this equitable low carbon economy working groups of getting our stakeholders together and running that with the idea of saying, you know, if there was a way for us to influence our local economy, to find opportunities to decarbonize as much as possible, to develop good pathways to good jobs, to create circular economies here, looking at enabling legislation, looking at things like the proposed Biden infrastructure plan, at the governor's new budget that just came out as well, and then come up with a work plan and some recommendations to bring to council to see if we can get something started here, as well as identifying funding. And then, of course, we're always doing lots of other things as well. So we'll continue with promoting resilient neighborhoods. Resilient neighborhoods is our main outreach tool, right? So folks that go through resilient neighborhoods often do reduce their carbon footprint 25 to 30%. And doing lots of other things in the community as well. We rely on our community to be able to do a lot of the things to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in San Rafael. Resilient neighborhoods new classes are coming up soon. And then I just wanted to stop with one last thing. I tend to be the face of sustainability here, but the reality is that there's so many people working on this. All the employees in all the departments really embrace this ethos. All these agencies we work with, our community-based organizations, volunteers and businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, all do this. So I plugged in, just typed out really quickly names of people and agencies that helped and make sure that our climate action plan is implemented, and threw it into a word cloud, and that's what I came up with. So you may see somebody you know. So at this point, we can open it up for comments, questions, suggestions, and public comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Your bandwidth and capacity is incredible. Just the priorities alone, and then the also things that you do. I just know around illegal dumping alone, there's been a lot of work. And thank you, Christine, for helping us to get a handle on those numbers. So what I'd like to do is start with any questions first, and we'll do comments after the public comment. So I will just call on us in the Zoom room. It's easier. Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
Yeah, a question and perhaps useful information, both of which relate to the Central Marin Sanitation Agency. I wanted to make sure that you were including in your tallies the expansion of CMSA's electricity generation program. I hope that you're aware that we have bought a second generator and anticipate being able to, and actually have started, we get checks every month from MCE for the renewable energy that we produce, not only to meet the entire load of that very large facility, but also to sell back into the system, all from the methane captured at our wastewater treatment plant. So that number has gone up. And have you incorporated that in your tallies for the past years?
So yes, it would be absolutely included. When that happens, it reduces the plant's reliance on natural gas or electricity. So that's how it's reported from PG&E. Those numbers are down. And then as it's greening, is that electricity renewable energy is going onto the grid. It greens the electricity on the grid, and then that's reflected in the emission factor. So yes, absolutely, it's included.
Fantastic, thank you. And just as a heads up, CMSA is also expanding its availability of recycled water in response to the drought, looking for other opportunities to make recycled water available. So hopefully that will be in your tallies in the future as we roll that program up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Corey and Christine, for that presentation. Microgrid is where I'm focused, and I know that's not the most important thing in terms of where most of our emissions are coming from, but I do serve on the ad hoc microgrid committee, and everything I've learned, and I will just say that I continue to learn how difficult it actually is to realize microgrids. You mentioned in your talk Boro as a potential site. can you walk us through, and I think, I know that you know the answer to this, but can you walk us through what it would take to get there? I mean, I'll just list off a couple just to get started, but beyond just the funding, there's a huge amount of regulatory, I would say, hurdles in front of us as well. I would just say, how realistic is to instrument and realize microgrid here in San Rafael?
Well, I tell you, there's a lot of minds that are a lot brighter than mine that are looking at this and are very interested. And we keep getting pinged by folks that really want to try to make something happen there, including someone from the Electrification Coalition. What is it? I'm blanking on the statewide organization that's looking at this. They do webinars on it all the time. And he's been looking at that and also is in contact with a vehicle to building product manufacturer. One of the beauties of that is that if you have an inverter that can go both ways to take from the solar panels and plug it into the building, but can also go the other direction and help with electric vehicle charging. But then when we have a power outage, the vehicle can charge the building. You don't have to place big batteries in different places as well, and you can use that vehicle. So I don't know all the regulatory hurdles. I know that the CPUC has made this a priority and that PG&E is coming out with some funding for it. And I know that there are people in the community that are trying to make this happen. I know MCE is working on a project in Fairfax right now. And I know my colleague in Fremont was able to make it happen at fire stations. So I have to think we can do it. But again, the devil's in the details. I can't really walk you through all the details of it, unfortunately.
Sure. Thank you.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add to it, though?
Who, Councilmember Hill or Christine?
For Councilmember Hill, sorry.
Oh. No, thank you. I just wanted to just to explore it a little bit with you, because my sense is that it's somewhat difficult to implement. So we can follow up later.
Yeah,
thank you.
Definitely harder when you have an existing facility than starting from scratch. That's for sure too.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtz.
Hi, thank you for the report. Really helpful, learned a lot. An area that I'm not very familiar with, so it was very helpful. I know you had mentioned that impact of 2020 in terms of being able to get through projects, but has there been any discussion at the state level or to change the goals or change the timeline? Or is it still the expectation that that's what it is regardless?
Yeah, so thank you for that. So initially, when we developed our first climate action plan, and as we were embarking on the revise for 2019, the state's goals were a 15% reduction by 2020, and then an 80% reduction by 2050, and there was nothing in between. And then as we started the update process, the state had an executive order, Governor Brown's executive order, to have a 40% reduction interim by 2030. And then the next year actually passed an executive order that said, you know what, we got to get to net zero by 2045. So those are the revised goals at this point that I know. Christine, is there anything else that came up that besides those?
No, those are the goals. And SB 32, which legislates the 40% reduction by 2030. So that is legislated. The others are executive orders.
Okay. All right, great. Another question, or really just I'm hoping you can share. I had asked a question of Corey earlier in the day about the integration of the sustainability program with planning and development and actual large projects. Can we get in front of stuff prior to things being built? And Corey, I thought your answer and response was great, and I was hoping you can share that with others.
Oh, sure. So, there's a real opportunity space here with the housing requirements and the green building requirements, and opportunities to build as green as possible at the outset. And of course, the challenge is always, first of all, it's easier and cheaper to do it from the outset, right, with new development than it is to retrofit. On the other hand, you also are in this space where you have to play about making sure you don't make things so prohibitive or so expensive that you can't get affordable housing on the market too, right? So we're always in that challenging space. And so Allie and I have committed to meeting monthly specific to this to try to uncover, especially as we head into this next green building cycle, where are the opportunity places to be able to do this? Trying to remember what else I said. Oh, we all new development is going to increase greenhouse gas emissions, unfortunately. So the more we can do to make sure that the long-term use of that building is minimal greenhouse gas emissions, the better. Ideally, if you build new transit, people will use transit, but there's so many unknowns, right? If you have cheap gas, people buy cars and they drive a lot. There's a lot of things that we don't have any control over. So we do the best we can to try to encourage people, make things easier for people, but that development piece is definitely a challenging one.
Thank you. I appreciate the response to that and absolutely understand. Probably just a little drop in the bucket of how this could impact, but has there been previous discussion around limiting this use of single-use plastics and utensils?
Yes. Matter of fact, I don't know how many people I talked to, they're just so sick of all the plastic during the pandemic, And so the county has a draft ordinance and they were just getting ready to launch that. We had asked for a lot of engagement with our business community and we were just getting ready to do that when the pandemic hit. And so that has been on the shelf, but it's coming back. The county has brought it back to the fore. They started to work on it again. The consultant that's working on that happens to be the same consultant that is working on our SB 1383 work. So we'll be engaging with them shortly. I think I have a meeting later this week with them to discuss how we do the business engagement. And the plan, the draft ordinance that they're working on is one that eliminates single-use plastics as much as possible with takeout containers, mandates reusable or compostable, and then would have a per cup charge when you get a cup of coffee or a to-go cup. And that's a big behavior change piece when people have to part even with 5 cents for something. When we passed the plastic bag ordinance, people were walking out of the grocery stores with cans in their arms.
My husband sometimes still does, but yeah. Okay, overall, is that like something to really go after? Is that a big change, or is that just one of those, it's a good thing to do, but it won't really move the needle?
In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it's probably not going to change that very much.
Okay. I
think that there may be not enough studies to really know. It's really more about the other type of pollution, right? So our storm drains, we have these phase 2 storm permits. We need to stop that stuff from going into the bay. And right now, our storm drains are big pipes, and it just all goes out to the bay. And you saw, the image in the DPW. So it's really challenging. So the more, I'll tell you this, when I would ride my bike to work, I would see plastic bags everywhere. When we did the plastic bag ordinance, dropped dramatically. I mean, I had plastic bags flying over my head riding to work. We counted plastic bags during our litter cleanups, and we would count 100, 150, 175 in every cleanup. A year later, 7, 8, or 9. So, there's a big value, but probably not in the greenhouse gas realm.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And Councilmember Micah, thank you, who is the liaison to the Climate Change Action Plan and works really closely with Corey and our community on this. So wanted to have you go last on this one. Do you have any questions? Even though I know you've already seen all this, but still.
Yeah, no, more like a comment. I actually had a question, but Councilmember Kurtz addressed that when I was looking at the data for, the food collection, I was curious to see the numbers for 2020. If you had the latest numbers were from 2019 or 2020, because I assume with the pandemic, we probably, maybe not, I don't know, because with the compost, I guess there's more compostable that, so you're still reducing the garbage, but definitely the one use plastic and containers are everywhere right now. So yeah, I just wanted a couple of comments. The first one, when we talk about the sea level rise in the canal, is going to affect us all. So if you're not in the canal, it's going to affect our freeways. And if you're in the hills and you think that is so far away, when you flush your toilet, you're going to realize that it's also affecting you when it comes back. So that was one. The other one that I really appreciate, Corey, is the fact that I think the social equity and, when we are talking about the environment and for everybody to have electric cars and EV chargers, just to keep in mind that not everybody can afford that. And also that sometimes rebates are great, but if you get a rebate for $5,000 for a new car and you still have to pay $20,000, you cannot afford that. So I think we had to figure out ways to make it equitable in order to reach that goal. So my last one, well, one more. So just to mention, in the canal, we still have apartments where people don't have a place to recycle. So I think, I know Corey is working very hard on the city with a marine sanitary to make sure that that is available, because sometimes people do want to recycle, but it's not possible. So I know that we will be working on that. And just to finish, that it does take a village. I really appreciate Corey recognizing everybody, but I want to recognize Corey because he is such an amazing leader. I had the pleasure to know him for many, many years, and now working with him in the city, he really, how do you say, walks the talk, and the way he brings the communities together and his knowledge is amazing. So we are very, very lucky to have him. So I will just end with that.
We appreciate that. Absolutely. Underscore, Corey, you are the one who has been leading our San Rafael efforts. I had one question that was building off of what Councilmember Kurtz said, and that is, are there penalties if we don't reach the state goals? Are there teeth to that? And I mean, obviously we're doing everything we can. And so both the state emission goals, also, if you can say if there's teeth having to do with the mandatory organic composting, you know, those mandates that are coming down, if you could speak to those.
Sure. Christine, do you want to speak to the greenhouse gas reductions, and I'll speak to the mandatory organic?
Sure. There are no penalties for the city if you don't meet your goal. The goal actually is a statewide goal, and then the state asks that the cities and towns try to also reduce emissions in concert with what the state is doing. So there's not any penalties now.
And for SB 1383, yeah, there'll definitely be penalties for the cities, up to $15,000 a day in some instances. We were hoping that due to the pandemic that this timeline would slow down a little bit, but CalRecycle has indicated no timeline slowdown. What they have said is, we will work with you. You know, we will work. We want to see progress. We want to see. So we're hopeful in that that we can do that. The great thing here is that we have Marine Sanitary Service, right? And they've always been at the bleeding edge, and they really want to do this well. And they've been planning, even though we're getting started later than I'd hoped with planning with all the jurisdiction. They've already been planning. They're looking at the long term. They're looking at the capacity that's going to be needed, both with this and the increased organics, as well as the increased fire fuel reduction and all the woody mass that's coming in. And they know they're going to have a deluge. So they've been planning a lot around that, and we look forward to working with them more.
So Corey, as a follow-up, is that a city-specific response? So the state will be looking at each jurisdiction separately, or are they going to look at Marin County, kind of going what Christine was talking about? Okay, so it'd be very specific to San Rafael and our numbers.
Yeah, okay. Very specific to San Rafael. There are some things that they asked the county to do that the city won't be on the hook for, but like, for instance, the food recovery. Yeah, we have procurement requirements, including we have to buy a certain amount of mulch and compost every year now too, based on our per capita. So those are some of the things that, even though they're required of us, we are looking at, is there a way to procure together with other cities? If we have to buy this much, but we only have this much land, can we work with Larkspur or, other jurisdictions?
And so that will be brought back to the council towards the end of the year to stay on the timing? Okay,
yep, exactly.
So more to come on that. Thank you. Okay, so what I'd like to do is ask the city clerk to help us out and see if there's any public comment. And what we'll do, there are actually 2 items, but go ahead and comment on either. So either the San Rafael Greenhouse Gas Inventory Report or the priority report. So I will accept public comment for both of those items right now.
Thank you. So if you're participating by telephone, please press *9. If you're on Zoom, go ahead and use the raise hand feature. And if you're submitting your public comments on YouTube, please write public comment in advance. And just a reminder, you will need to submit those in groups. We do have quite a few hands raised.
Hello. Hi, this is Carlene Cullen. I'm the founder and executive director of Cool the Earth, and we launched a new campaign called Drive Clean in 2019. So I wanted to, first of all, thank Christine and Corey for their great report and efforts. So we know that the EV transition is happening, but it's not happening fast enough from a climate perspective. And the goal of our campaign, it's a collaborative campaign. The goal of our campaign is to help people make their next car electric or an e-bike. or some other form of non-polluting transportation. And San Rafael has about 2,000 registered electric vehicles right now. And to reach the 25% goal, we need to get to about 13,000. The county actually has a higher goal, which is 45%. So, we need to get there as fast as we can. Some of the major barriers to EV adoption are really about consumer perceptions. The market is changing so rapidly, but consumers cannot keep up with the changes. For instance, many vehicles already have a total cost of ownership that are with price parity with gas cars. And the prices are coming down dramatically. By 2024, overall, new car sales are expected to be at price parity with new gas cars. Additionally, charging on the road has gotten many times faster. So there's lots of confusion about how do I charge at home. There's also new solutions coming on the marketplace from an equity perspective. There's new smart outlets. So if there is a parking stall for somebody at a multi-unit dwelling, they will be able to charge at home, which that's coming in 2022. So this is very important. And finally, so what our campaign does, we're a collaboration. We have webinars, Ask Me Anything, test drive events, communications. We also have public workshops for low-income people to understand what the rebates and incentives are. And finally, we are working on a major countywide campaign for the fall. And we really would like to work with San Rafael. And I know we've discussed with Corey and Christine. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlene, for all that you do. Thank you.
Hi, this is Eva Crisanti. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I think you are missing the elephant in the room with all this talk of electric vehicles and presumed, quote, equity. The single family zoning in San Rafael is killing the environment. And unfortunately, it's also what builds a lot of the wealth that contributes to the campaign coffers of the people who run for city council and even the mayor. And if you were really going to look at who had a small carbon footprint, it would actually be the homeless population. And this is a much reviled population, particularly in San Rafael, that's been subject to all sorts of, frankly, environmental crimes. They've had porta potties removed. They have had access to showers removed. They've had their mailboxes removed. But these are people who use very little of anything and, can't even get regular garbage disposal or even safety. If you want it to be a model city, you might look at what open space you have and creating some sort of safe encampment with an electrical grid, with showers, with porta potties, with hand washing stations, something that would allow people to regain access to quote unquote civilized society. And by the way, one thing you wouldn't do is deliberately and quote unquote tactically remove their mail access at Ritter Center, which you apparently did in 2017 with the MOU with the Ritter Center. I asked questions about this, and Mayor Collin and Andrew Henning both announced they had sick relatives and would not be able to answer the questions.
And your 2 minutes. Thank you so much for calling in and sharing your thoughts. We'll take the next caller, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Chris, go ahead.
I'd like to thank Corey and Christine for their report. As usual, you hit it out of the park. My name is Chris Yolanis. I'm founder and president of VenturePad, which is Marin's co-work and entrepreneurship center leader. We've been very active in bringing the business community on board, the climate action plans and some of the sustainability plans. And I look forward to working with the council and with Corey and staff on building a clean, equitable economy for Marin as well as San Rafael. And there's a couple things that I wanted to bring to the attention of the council. that we really need to be thinking about the foundation that these initiatives and priorities will lay upon. And that is building an ecosystem that drives these priorities. So the zero emission vehicles, or the building energy efficiency, renewables and storage, recycling and composting. There's a lot of things that we can be doing to drive this adaptation of these new technologies, but also create a compelling economic case. Can't just be aesthetics and to green, the world. It needs to have a compelling economic case. So there's a few things that are involved in that that we believe. One is around policy incentives, and those have got to be a foundational driver. We need to put better financing vehicles together, whether that be taxes or user fees or investor funding, investors in clean tech startups and young scalable companies, donor grants, cross-sector partnerships. So financing is going to be an important part of the implementation of a lot of these priorities. We need one-stop shopping for building owners who can go to a clearinghouse online and get contracting information, technology alternatives, get bids to compare apples to apples. The other thing is we need to think about is...
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I know you can't see it's kind of a funny thing.
I can't see my two minutes.
I know,
Sorry.
so your 2 minutes is up, but
Okay.
I know you've been very involved, and do continue to forward your ideas to Corey and the CCAP team.
Will do.
Thank you.
And by the way, green economy means jobs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next caller is on the telephone.
Hi, good evening. This is Bill Carney with Sustainable San Rafael. So tonight's a time for San Rafael to celebrate. We should celebrate that we have brought down greenhouse gas emissions by over 25% in the last 10 years. And that means we're on a trajectory to reduce another 25% in the next 10 years, which would bring us to 50% below 2005 greenhouse gas levels and 40% below 1990 levels. That means we would meet San Rafael's CCAP 2030 goal while also tracking closely on state, UN, and US goals. It would also keep us on course to meet Drawdown Marin's countywide goal of zero net emissions by 2045, sequestering more CO2 annually than we emit and storing it in healthy forests, soils, and shorelines. But tonight is also a time for San Rafael to recommit. We'll only achieve these goals by adopting and implementing the kind of priority strategies recommended in the CCAP priorities update, especially priority 1, the zero emission vehicles, priority 2, mandatory organic recycling, and priority 5, building electrification. The good news is that the technologies and techniques needed to meet these challenges are already at hand. We have affordable access to greenhouse gas-free electricity, to electric vehicles, to electric heat pumps and appliances, and to organic recycling. Sustainable San Rafael heartily endorses adopting the priorities before you for the next 2 years, and especially in those 3 categories. Implementing these strategies for low emission transportation, for building electrification, and for waste management will also have the benefit of enabling the city to approve its General Plan 2040 later this summer, with confidence that San Rafael can reach at least a 60% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2040. I want to commend staff for a great job on getting us to this point and carrying us forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all that Sustainable San Rafael does.
Good evening. This is Kiki Laporta, also with Sustainable San Rafael and Sustainable Marin. Also want to endorse Bill Carney's remarks and Chris Yolonis's remarks and support the efforts of Corey and staff in developing both the recap, and thanks, Christine, as well as the priorities. I'd like to speak specifically about the number 5 priority, which is the building and natural gas reduction. It's critical that your council exercise the kind of leadership that you can to create an environment where new buildings cannot be created with natural gas hookups. There's no reason for it, as we've already stated, and we know well, there is technology available that gives us everything we need for all of the mod cons that we want without natural gas. So that's a number 1 point. And another point that is important for your council to consider in conjunction with the county and the state, and that is there's a tremendous amount of funding coming down from the federal government and from the state that is designated for social equity programs and environmental programs. And I am truly, truly hoping that San Rafael can realize some of that funding to address both issues, removing natural gas from buildings, electrifying our economy, and providing opportunity for lower income residents and business owners to take advantage of the technology and the resources that are available to us now. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you, Kiki, and for your leadership on Sustainable Marin.
The next caller is on the telephone.
Okay.
Hello, Mayor Kate and council members. I'm Tamara Peters. I'm the founder and director of Resilient Neighborhoods. And I want to thank Corey and Christine for acknowledging the importance of including consumption in greenhouse gas inventories. Resilient Neighborhoods is a comprehensive climate program for Marin residents, and we address all means of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, including consumption. Our 5-meeting workshop has participants learn the power that their purchasing decisions have on the health of our planet and the power those decisions can have to cause businesses to change their practices, like finding alternatives to plastic. Our participants also shift to more plant-based diets and cancel some planned air travel. In addition, we empower participants to compost and reduce food waste, conserve water, seal their homes, change to electric appliances, switch to EVs or bikes, and get prepared for emergencies and wildfires. Our program is countywide, but our heart and our start came in San Rafael. 30% of our participants live in San Rafael and have achieved an average of 33% reduction of their household carbon emissions during our program. We give people the roadmap to a zero-emission household, and 75% of our participants keep taking new actions after they graduate. And I just want to take a last moment to thank my city, San Rafael, for all the help it has given me and Resilient Neighborhoods over our decade of existence, from spurring me on as a volunteer at the beginning to keep going, to sharing interns, staff, and office space as we grew. Thank you, San Rafael. And I just want to say, Mayor Kate has been on one of our climate action teams, and I invite each of you to consider it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Both Tamara and Bill were San Rafael Citizens of the Year. I think it was two or three years ago. So for their work in environmental space. So thank you. City Clerk, do we have anybody else? Oh, okay.
Yes. Can you hear me? This is Belle Cole.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Belle.
Hi. And I had some kind of malfunction, so I can't read exactly what I sent a letter to you, but this is what I really want to say. So I'll just say it.
Okay.
Without, I go along, I support all the comments of my colleagues, Bill and Chris and Tamara and Kiki, and because we all have been working for this, and kudos to Christine and to Corey. I want to identify opportunities for organic waste diversion that also sequesters carbon And I do this from my position as a kind of lead on the Marin biomass recovery project study, and also as a lead on the ecologically sound practices partnership of MWPA. And so this is really to say something that is a little different from others, which is in the study that we're doing, we are really aligning with what it is that San Rafael is doing, and we think we can be of help. We're going to address the need for, both are addressing the need for more capacity for increased organic material from wildfire fuel reduction and from prevention activities and from curbside collection activities and from organic diversion from landfill. And the other thing that we're doing that I think will be valuable to you is the work that we're doing on the subject of a feasibility study, which will provide a biomass inventory and an assessment of economically feasible products and processes that will reduce carbon reduce carbon output. And we're doing this by looking at such things as taking biomass and making it into wood products, biological biofuels, syngas, renewable biomass.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt because I know you can't see the screen. And
oh, I see. Okay, I just want to say that this work will be will work with our colleagues in San Rafael to make sure that we can prioritize and help them as they move ahead with this priority. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And if you find your note, do write it up and send it to the council. But we appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff Rhodes, Resilient Shore. And I want to first express kudos to both Corey and Christine for their very enlightening presentation, and also report on the progress that we're making as a city and as a community, thanks to all the efforts of a very well-organized community focused on greenhouse gas reduction. There is some take-home, though, that I received as I was listening to Corey's presentation. And part of that is this notion of our in-boundary contribution to GHG reduction is limited to 25% of the total. So in spite of the efforts that we have locally, we still are responsible. We still have, as consumers, 3/4 of our consumption is related to consumption. And the point that I guess I want to make is that we're in the behavioral change business, really. And we need, on the land use side, to focus on things that encourage the kind of behavior and consumption patterns that are far more compatible with reducing greenhouse gas. Things like transit-oriented development downtown and in Northgate and near the Civic Center station, where people can use active transportation and public transportation and reduce their footprint and also consume less stuff. So the other thing I'd like to observe is we are really, our focus in Resilient Shore is really more on the mitigation side and addressing things like sea level rise. And one of the things that I heard today that concerns me a bit, and that is over-reliance on the county to solve our problems. Fact of the matter is we need to own our own destiny and understand that the factors that affect cooperation on the peninsula with the county of an extensive bay plain do not apply here. The topography determines how we're going to respond to sea level rise adaptation in San Rafael. Our cooperation with the county should be focused in the Galenas watershed, where there's county jurisdiction as well as city. But essentially, our focus needs to be quickly on addressing the problems like the canal being the first major area at risk of sea level rise. So I'd like to share with you the notion that our next step is to implement general plan policy and focus on a shore and watershed adaptation plan.
Thank you,
so
Jeff.
much.
Yep, thank you for your time.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. We'll bring it back to the council for comments. But before that, I think most of the input we heard were comments and underscoring key priorities. But I was hoping, Corey, based on what Mr. Rhodes was just talking about, if you could talk about the county partnerships. I know that's something that gets talked about a lot in the environmental circles. How much do jurisdictions do by themselves and how much do we do with our county partners? So could you maybe just speak to that, and then I'll go around to the rest of the council for comments.
Absolutely, good question. Thank you. I think just coming out of if you remember the grand jury report that came out last year, and the big focus was on the need to collaborate and the need to understand that no disaster knows boundaries, no jurisdictional boundaries. The county has a lot more staff and knowledge, has worked on this subject a lot more. We rely on them. The Bay Wave project only happened because of the county. So it's really not about sloughing off our responsibilities or not, taking ownership. It's more about how do we do these collaborations. One of the things that Chris Chu at Bay Wave was looking for was an opportunity to say, how do we go beyond Bay Wave into actual adaptation planning? How do we really grapple with these really complex, expensive, political, challenging topics? So I agree with Jeff that topography plays a large part in it. We just don't have the staff, or the bandwidth to do it ourselves. And then we have to come up with ways to collaborate. If we build something in San Rafael and the neighboring county jurisdiction doesn't have protection, we're just diverting, flood potential into the county land. So we've got to work together. So this is a great way for us to try to do that in a project, learn as we go, and hopefully be able to develop a way to work together with the county that can be used in other places as well. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. No, thank you for providing that additional information. So I will just call on each of my colleagues. If you have additional questions, do ask them. Otherwise, comments are appropriate. Vice Mayor.
Just want to second everyone's comments that Corey and Christine did a wonderful job with their presentation tonight. And to really shine the spotlight, though, on Corey, who's been doing this for a long time. When it wasn't popular, it wasn't a well-trodden path, and inventing it when it needed to be invented. So thank you, Corey, for your years of devotion to this topic. It shows by the progress that we've made. I would be happy to move to accept the reports when the time is right.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kate, and thank you again, Corey and Christine. Those were great reports. I would echo Vice Mayor's comments that you have done such a wonderful job to bring our community on this journey, and this is something that takes all of us. I think this was mentioned more than once. This can't just be driven by the city, but it is being driven by the leadership of community members. And people coming together and understanding the science. GHG is a major component of this, and there's so many other dimensions that we explored tonight. Single-use plastic, I think, is clearly a major problem that is not a GHG contributor, but it is a major environmental catastrophe that continues to happen. So anyway, I, like Vice Mayor Bushy, will be supporting acceptance of these reports. And thank you so much for the reports tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtz.
Yes, thank you for the updates. And there's no doubt that both of you, and Corey especially, are in the right role for this work, and appreciate all the, your name comes up over and over and over again with different groups. And that's just a testament to the work that you both are doing in terms of outreach and engaging with the community. And I think it's really important because this work is going to take everyone. to make happen, and we have to do it for the future. And so look forward to seeing as we move forward in terms of the plans, and look forward to your leadership through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Micah.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for the presentation and for everything that you do. I echo what Vice Mayor was saying around climate change when it wasn't sexy. And I am so thrilled now that to see it, that is such an important matter that it is really, it's going to affect, it is already affecting all our lives. I'm very excited about the federal support that we have from the our new president. And I really hope that there's going to be some nice funding coming our way that we can utilize as a city and also as a county, because I do agree that this is not just our topography, which is very special, but the more we can collaborate, the more effective it's going to be. So thank you again so much for everything. And I will be happy to move on the second report when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll just echo my colleagues. And Christine, I mean, thank you for getting the numbers out of the data is the backbone for the decisions that we're making. And you continue to help us figure that out year after year. And of course, Corey, the accolades could just keep going for your leadership. And I think Bill Carney said it really well, that we've had some success. We need to celebrate the greenhouse gas reduction we've had over the last 10 years. And once we're done celebrating, take a deep breath and start working on it again and getting the rest of it. And to me, the most incredible or the most impactful of all the graphs, and it's one we've seen from the beginning, is how much that the city directly controls, right? So it's such a small sliver of the pie when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, which means that we depend on our CBOs, to Councilmember Kurtz's point. We have to work with them, and we want to work with them. And we are grateful that at our CCAP quarterly meetings, we come together and figure that out. So I agree that I'm glad we're in San Rafael doing this collaborative work, and onward and upward. And with that, I had heard, I think, Vice Mayor, we should, let me ask the city clerk, can we do them as one, or would you like them separately?
Two separately, please.
Two separately, okay. Vice Mayor.
I move that we accept the Greenhouse Gas Inventory and Reduction Strategy Annual Report for 2019.
Councilmember Micah, do you want to second that?
I'll second, I'm sorry. I'll second.
For all the work you've done. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Urans-Glady.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. And the second one? Go ahead, Councilmember Micah.
Oh, so I'll make a motion, let's see, to accept the report on the 2-year work plan priorities report 2021-2023.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, with the motion and seconded, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Urans-Glady.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that passes 5-0. Thanks again to Corey and Christine for all the work that you have done. So when I look at our agenda, that is the last item on our docket this evening. So I don't know if staff's going to come on and wave, but thank you for, they're slowly coming on and waving. I have to give a moment. That is it for this evening. This meeting is adjourned. Everyone stay safe out there. Good night.
Good night, everybody.